about being able to uh, bounce back from pregnancy? Because at that time, I mean, now more the women are getting a lot of attention and respect for
Right.
having children and coming back and competing and being successful. I mean, for example, yes,
Right.
Alison Felix, amazing. She had her child, but she placed fifth, sixth at the championships. You had two children for your first time, and you were right in the mix, and running super fast.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about that year.
Yeah, it was tough. Many interviews you would hear me say that I went through depression while I was pregnant, because after hearing so many people say, like, you ruined your career, I don't believe you would allow this to happen, and this, that, and the other. You're constantly hearing that, and then you're actually thinking that at the same time that that you'll never be the same. And now I just have to kind of continue just with being a mom, because in your mind, or in my mind, I thought that it's no such thing as being an athlete and a mom at the same time. That's just what I thought. I never seen it. I've never seen someone have kids and come back and be just as good. Typically what I was used to seeing was a mom was a mom. And of course, you have moms that are working, but in sports, you didn't see that example of them doing both. So I thought that it was over too. But luckily, I had a mom who, she went through the same thing. She had my older sister young at 19, 18 or 19. And she was explaining how she still came back and ran, and some of the obstacles that she had to struggle with. And she's like, trust me, it's going to feel like you're not going to be able to come back, but just one day it's going to happen and you're going to be back. Just trust me. So her saying that, it wasn't like I was like, okay, it just was at the back of my head what she told me, and I had to take it day by day. But at first, it was just me getting over the fact that I was pregnant and kind of accepting that this is what I was going to do, because it was other thoughts, about abortion and all that kind of stuff. And that was the first decision, like, to do or not to do. And when I just couldn't go through with it, then it was accepting, like, you made a decision and you have to, like, live with it. And it took me a while to even move forward with living with that. So I think about after 6 months of being pregnant, I started to kind of get into becoming a mom. I never took pictures. I don't have any pictures of me pregnant with my twins. Wow. Because I wouldn't allow people to take pictures of me. I didn't tell anybody that I was pregnant. A select few knew. And when I mean a select few, it was a select few. And then until I got caught out somewhere and somebody seen me pregnant, and then everybody knew at that time. Yeah. But so coming back, I think they tell you to take 6 weeks off after your pregnancy. And I decided I wanted to take 4 weeks off.
Of course.
What's the difference between 4 and 6? To me, it was a big difference. But I get out there and just couldn't even jog. And I'm talking about trot jogging. I couldn't do anything. My body was in pain. I felt sharp pains everywhere. Started tearing up, and my mom was like, well, let's just walk. You don't have to run, just walk. Like, you have plenty of time. Because it was a year out from the 08 Olympics. So I cut back and I said, okay, I'll just walk. I'll walk until I can jog. And end up being the 6 weeks that the doctor told me to wait, that I started jogging at that time. Mm-hmm. But it was so hard to train, because I came back knowing what I used to be able to do. And I was nowhere near that coming back. So I had to, my mom stayed with me the first 2 months after I gave birth to the twins. So she was there. And she came out with me to every single workout. And when I would try to give up because I was unable to do, like, elementary things, she would never allow me to. So she was like a big influence at that time, and helped me get through that. And week by week, I would improve. And it was like small improvements, but I would improve. And that's what I needed to see. As long as I see an improvement, it would keep me going for the next week. But it took a good 9 months before I was back, where I'm like, oh, okay. And it never felt like my old body. It was like a new body, but I knew that I was able to like get after it again. And it took about 9 months. So it was a tough journey, a long journey. And I think one of the reasons why at trials I just didn't have it was because I was training for over a year nonstop, no breaks. And we don't do that in a normal, typical year. We have at least 6 weeks to, 2 months off. And I didn't have even that. I didn't allow myself that. And I think that was the mistake that year. And I just didn't have it. But it was still a really good season for me, considering coming back from the kids and stuff. Yeah.
Considering, yeah. Look amazing. You know, you're like, oh yeah, just, I had some twins and came back and almost made the team, and
I didn't have time.
What time? What was your time that year? What'd you run?
I think the fastest time I ran it was 53.9. I don't know what I ran at trials though, but I know I got under. I was so happy to get under 54 seconds that year. That was like one of the things I was waiting to do.
Yeah.
And I went 53.9.
You're saying a year before that you couldn't even jog. That's it's amazing stuff. And I interviewed the athlete I coached, Bruno, because he had got into a car accident and came back and ran 44. And it's like, these are the stories, like, resilience. Like this is, athletes, man. You could go and do anything. If you have that type of resilience and determination, you will be successful at whatever you decide to do. And this is the benefit.
With people, they're like, how did you come back? Like, what were you thinking? I'm like, I was thinking that this was the way I was feeding my kids. Like, I didn't have time to think about being treated equally or getting a contract where they put in a mother's clause or something. Like, it was no time for that. You didn't see it happen before. And so you assumed like it's either flight or fright. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I spoke with Kara Goucher on her podcast, I was telling her I didn't have time to even consider what a support system will look like being a mom. It just didn't happen. Like what they have going now with, all these just people supporting, mothers on and off the field it would have been a life changer for me to have that support and to have those type of people backing me. Because I literally was like, you know what, my body is my job. I decided to do this. So there's no way I can fight against them saying what they are, what they are not going to do for me or what they are going to do for me. So I just didn't think I had much, I guess, rights. And I lived with it. It was no time to think about that and advocate for moms. I'm like, what can I say?
Yeah. I mean, that's interesting because they actually really just started doing that maybe 2 years ago, so it's so crazy to even think about that. And you got my brain turning a little bit because for men, when they're going through things, like it's not necessarily the same as for a woman. And you just started talking about support systems. If a woman is having a baby during that time, and hopefully she has her family as her support system. But if she's not as close with her family during that time and athletics weren't supporting, what do they do? How do they continue to go through that process? And I know, I think after reading, I think you're pretty close with your family. You always talk to your mom and dad, sound very supportive since a young age. But it's kind of mind blowing to imagine if that wasn't the case. And for someone who was as talented as you and had that work ethic and worked so hard to really get to a certain level, pinnacle, and then no support, and that's happened to a lot of people, a lot of people.
Yeah.
So.
That's what the team for me is trying to survive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's me crawling and gripping to survive.
Yeah.
And that's what you see at that time. Yeah.
It's easier to put people on blast now with social media. Like when Allison and with Nike, it was like when people saw what happens, like that the companies can just be like, oh, well, you're not running? Sorry. Like, wait a second. You got to treat people a little better than that.
Yeah, and it's a little easier to speak out when you're talking about you're at the end of your career as well. So imagine somebody that I'm in my early 20s, my professional career just started.
Yeah.
Would I even think to speak out about you know what I mean? Like, it just didn't seem, it just wasn't possible to even consider doing something like that at that time for me. So I'm glad that they're changing the conversation, though, because it's definitely something to think about. And you have a lot of men in these rooms, no offense, Adrian, making decisions for women. And it's like, first of all, if your mom wasn't here or didn't go through with having you, you wouldn't be here. So how dare you think, you know, so to exclude us in something like this. But I'm glad the conversation started.